Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Lost City. So, concept alone, when I was to just kind of pick through the concept of this movie, I'm like, well, like this feels almost very similar to the Jodie Foster, Gerard Butler film, Nim's Island. And I'm like, yeah, like it feels fairly similar, with the exclusion of like Gerard Butler's character being some imaginary friend of Jodie's, whereas like Channing Tatum, who is Alan slash Dash in this movie, he's to be like a legitimate person. So I honestly feel like this movie rests a lot on like certain ideas or concepts, and it doesn't feel like a fully baked film. Also, we just kind of have Channing Tatum here as just eye candy. Just like, ooh, wow, look at that guy, shirtless. Ooh, wow. Oh, no, like, he has less clothes on in this part of this movie. Oh, wow. He's just eye candy. Like, so, like, that's gotta feel really bad that this character is just to play the same guy that we've seen him for I don't know how long in every single one of these movies, and like doesn't really give us anything different. As well as like Sandra is like, she's just like, we have both of these characters just kind of being the people that they've been for I don't know how long. But the only thing that I really found to be actually interesting in this film was Brad Pitt's character, because obviously that is the best part of this whole entire film, for how not very long-winded this character is to really be in the film for. And honestly, Daniel Radcliffe. Like, I liked Daniel Radcliffe being the villain of this story, simply because, like, he was, like, really fun. It was, like, really fun to see him in this different kind of role, where at some points he's going on and he's like clapping away and he's like, yeah, guys, like, thanks for the horrible job that you've been doing. Yeah, so teeing it up, what is this movie about? So we have Loretta, who is played by Sandra Bullock here, who is to be this author, who it seems she's just kind of rushing through her last book just to shove it out, so that way she can be forced to be going on this book tour, because Beth is to, of course, have already scheduled this book tour, and Loretta is just having a, like, just writer's block, but she just shoves that thing out there. So it seems that both Loretta and Alan, who is to be playing the book cover model of these romance books or erotica books that Loretta is to be putting out, Dash is to only be really to be a guy that is to rip his shirt off, or is to get half naked through, or naked through this movie. And so we have Dash, who is trying to tell Loretta that he's more than just a model. Is he more than just the guy that takes his shirt off in this movie? No. But no, he has a backstory. Okay. Whatever. So Loretta, after going on to leave this convention after things aren't to turn horribly awry during this whole book tour, Loretta is to go on and be kidnapped by multiple men in this SUV, and is to make her way to Daniel Radcliffe's character, who is Fairfax, who is to realize that Loretta had stumbled upon a dead language which nobody knows the real translation for, and because it's from a tribe that no longer exists, and Fairfax is desperately wanting to go on and find Colomon's tomb and the fire, or the crown of fire. And so he's hoping that Loretta is going to translate this little piece to help him find it. And it seems that Loretta is just kind of going on and like delaying and not really like giving Fairfax much of real information, to the point where it seems that Alan has to go on to try to have a two-man search party, of course, with Brad Pitt alongside him to try and rescue Loretta, and then hopefully we find both of these two here, slowly but surely, starting to either much more understand one another or to possibly even fall in love with one another. So, like, in a nutshell, that's The Lost City. I'll go on and I'll talk more about it in spoilers. Where can you find this film? Where can you go out of your way to say that you can watch this movie for free if you want to just completely avoid going through Paramount Plus, because that's technically where the movie is right now, on Paramount Plus. If you're already going on and watching the Halo series or watching any number of things that are on Paramount Plus, then I guess The Lost City is just a convenient thing for you. But so, also, you can go on to a number of apps that I've said through a number of different movies and shows, and almost everywhere. So, first off, I'm going to rattle off these things. Go into a Google search and search the word Literacy Movies app. There, in fact, hopefully you can find an app you can download and, be able to see whatever you like. Premium access stuff, brand new releases, stuff that would normally be on just a certain kind of exclusive stuff will not be exclusive to you anymore. Another app, Fox HD Movies. Regardless of what I say next, just kind of search for those words, because Fox HD Movies will be on the logo of this app, but the title will say something different. It'll say Play 1080p HD Movies. So hopefully you'll be able to download that app and be able to see whatever you like. Really, whatever you can't find on Literacy Movies app, you can find on that other app. So yeah, so check that out. And don't have the word letter there. It's like two words. It's just C and movies. So there's that. And then possibly, eventually this will be available like for it to actually be a legitimate thing, because it's already just like the cam version of it on this other app, but I'm going to recommend this anyways. So you can go on to a Google Play Store and search the word TV Crush. That's two words. And you can hopefully find an app that has the logo that says HD Movies with a like king crown onto the side. Download that app and hopefully be able to see Lost City eventually when it's going to be available. Instead of it just being like this kind of this little cam thing, you can go on and actually watch the movie hopefully. So with that said, let's just go on into spoilers. So I would have to say, like, grading wise, like, one, I have to eschew my grading because I don't really know if this movie was I don't know if the target audience really was for me. Like, I just feel it's that kind of movie. Like, I would have to go on and have a person that is really into this kind of stuff for this movie to like this film. Like, I don't like romance, like, books and, like, stuff like that where it's just kind of like, So, really, I would just say that, like, this probably does have a target audience that probably just was not me. So, I would say that this is a light, bad movie. Like, really, like, they're like the only real details about this movie is the D language that they have to speak, the tomb and certain locations, but then everything else is just kind of like a hodgepodge of just relying on concepts or ideas or just certain things to just kind of get this movie just out of the way. So for that, like, that's what I just feel about this film. So with that said, let's just go into that double five time territory. Let's just go into spoilers, because it's spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time to spoil this movie. So in the very beginning of this film, we have Loretta, who is struggling to finish the lost island of D. And so with D being put in there, we're to basically have D jokes a lot of Wang jokes and all that kind of garbage, where we're saying like the tip of, hey, yeah, the tip of the D tip, or yeah, like just the tip, just stupid jokes. So. But anyways, we have Loretta, who is working on this book, and her publisher, who is Beth, is consistently going on and sending messages like, hey, like, when are you going to finish up this book? We need a book for this book tour. I've already booked this book tour, so, like, come on, finish up this book. So Loretta is going on and trying to figure out some way to figure out how to finish writing this. And so by the time that they end up getting to this tomb, we have both Dash and we have both Angela, who are in the middle of this room where all of a sudden all these snakes are gathering around. I'm like, this is so Indiana Jones. And so we have this fantasy villain that comes in like, aha, like, I've got you kind of thing. And so all of a sudden, both Angela and both Dash, who are both Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum here, are starting to notice all these snakes just crawling around, and all of a sudden there seems to be some snakes that start crawling up this henchman, and they're like, well, wait a minute, why isn't any of the snakes attacking this henchman? And, like, so, really both of the characters start pulling up the facts that, like, none of the snake thing, like, really makes sense. How is it that these snakes have just been lying in wait in there, and, like, who feeds them? And so, how is it all these snakes are there? It doesn't make any sense. So, we have Loretta, who is changing her book, and so instead they just see the two couple there as Loretta is getting rid of all the characters, the fantasy villain, and the villain's like, wait a minute, like, I think my character still works, and Loretta's like, no. delete, 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 delete. So the main thing of how both Angela and Dash's story is to end within this book is just that they make it to the tomb, and that's, of course, how Angela just ends it. And so she shoves this book out called The Last Island of D, and so she goes on this book tour. So Beth is to go on and tell Loretta that her, like, one suit, or her one piece, like, glittered suit that makes her look like a figure skater is on loan. And so we have Beth, who is to also showcase to Loretta that she has like a social media assistant called Allison. And so Allison is reading this, like, this post from some social media somewhere, this tweet or something like that, going on and, like, saying that she's gonna gag while going and meeting with all of her fans, and all of these, like, weird hashtags and all this garbage, which I just thought was so stupid, but it was funny. It was stupid funny. So we have a Loretta that goes out there and is to, like, struggle to get on her very high stool. And so now everybody is going on and much more anticipating the other person who is a tag team with Loretta via every one of these book tours, and it's to be, like, her book cover model, who is the guy that they call in the book called Dash, but his actual name is Alan. So Alan comes out there in the final countdown Europe song, And so he starts going on and he does like this karate and all these like goofy things. And all these women are like, ah! And so we have it, of course, where Dash or where Alan is wanting to get Loretta off this stool so he can dip her, with Loretta just giving him nothing and just feeling like a lifeless body. Alan goes back and puts Loretta back to her seat, and then he is to go on and sit like really cool on his stool. And so we go on, and as like questions are starting to happen as this interviewer is going on and asking these two questions, the first question was like, well, hey, like, what is the lost island of D? What does the D really mean? And Alan was like, well, no, like, let me answer this. Like, I think, like, I was so pleased that Loretta was writing a book about the lost island of Dash, and she just calls it D. Like, man, that's like, I really like that. And Loretta's like, well, no, that's not that at all. And then the interviewer is like, well, it means dick, right? It means dick, right? I'll just say it. Anyways, so Loretta is like, well, no, like it's all about like a certain tribe that is now long since dead, and like, and because they couldn't easily pronounce what this tribe was, they just kind of shortened it and just called it D. And they're like, oh, yeah, because we have to have Loretta, who is to be very like intelligent and is to kind of have these certain kind of personas about these characters. Like in the beginning of this film, Alan and Angela and Dash were to mention how like Dash had so many of these like certain college educational things and how they worked out in this story. And like there's a lot of just cliche-ish things that are just tossed in this movie, which I do technically enjoy. It's just like this movie is like a lot of just cliches. So we go on, and now they throw it out to the audience to ask questions. And so every single woman, all she wants is just for Alan to have his shirt ripped off, because again, Channing Tatum is eye candy in this film. So we have it where everybody just keeps asking, and like Loretta is to go on like, well, what about you, like lady over there, like what is your question? And then her question is like, well, hey Loretta, can you go on and rip this guy's shirt off? It's like, okay. So Loretta is to go on and try to take off this guy's shirt, as everyone is to seemingly want to. They're cheering for it and whatever. So all of a sudden, Loretta is to find out that her smartwatch is to get caught in Alan's hair, and come to find out, Alan is to fall off this stage, and we find out that Alan is actually wearing a wig, and that she could not, or she wasn't, Loretta was not able to tear off this guy's shirt. So we find out the truth that actually Alan is to like be wearing a wig. So yeah, that just kind of ends that just ends that whole like convention thing, or that just ends that whole like panel of them talking about this book. So we have both Loretta and Alan just kind of walking off, and Alan is going on and just criticizing Loretta. And the main thing to come out of this is when he ends up saying that she's a human mummy, and the one cook who's just kind of in the kind of chef area is like, mummies are human, bro. So Loretta just walks off as the idiocy of Alan, and like she's going on and like tipping this trash over, and then that's when she ends up getting nabbed by these guys in this SUV, who are of course Rafi, Julian, and I think Shades. So Alan is to want to confront Loretta about what he was to go on and say, as the chef is kind of convincing him by just wanting the chef to want to get tomatoes to just get out of here. And so Alan goes on to try to confront Loretta, as Loretta was trying to get an Uber and said she got kidnapped. And Alan is to spot the kidnappers chasing off Loretta. And so Alan is like, oh my god, like, Loretta's getting nabbed. Because we kind of technically have Alan who's to really go on and rely on Loretta to keep making these books so he can keep being the cover model. And also, Alan really wanted to understand what she would want to go on and do with Dash in another installment, because Loretta was saying that she is really tempted to want to kill Dash off in the next book. And Alan was like, wait a minute, like, how are you going to kill my character off? Is it going to be the snakes? Are you going to, like, kill me with the snakes? And, like, are you going to give me a stab infection? Like, what are you going to do? And Loretta's like, I don't know. Like, I'm coming up with something. Because Loretto just wants to change something up. And, like, she doesn't want to keep writing these books anymore. So, Alan, who is wanting to save Loretta, and so Alan goes with Beth, and they're trying to figure out what to do next, who to call, so on and so forth. And they're rattling off like these, like, well, yeah, like, we need some like ex-military guys, we need some like kind of like people who are can rescue people, like that's their job. And so it seems that Alan was to go on some meditation retreat and stumble upon a guy named Jack Trainer, who is played by Brad Pitt in this movie. Hands down the best character in this whole film. Basically, what happens with this character, which is like, oh, because I get it. When really looking at it, like, Brad Pitt had such a strong presence in this movie compared to both the lead actors. So really, like, they had to do something with that character. So let's get into it. So Alan is to call Jack Trainer, and Beth is saying, seriously, his name is actually Trainer? Because Alan was going on and rattling off all these names that he knew of certain people, like, and he was calling, like, certain people, like, oh, like Julian Butt Stuff, and like this and that, and I'm like, so are they? Is that the actual name of people? So Jack Trainer is really Jack Trainer, and so when he picks up this phone, it seems like he's eating something while he's going on and talking. I'm like, this reminds me like just of Fight Club, where we had like Brad Pitt who's talking to Edward Norton through the phone, and he's like, he's eating those chips while talking to Edward Norton. He's like, oh, I never have on my phone. So Jack is to, of course, answer the phone and is to be this kind of very cliche-ish, because this movie is basically a talking cliche. So Jack is to go on and say, it's like, well, yeah, like, I'm going to go on and rescue this girl, but first you need, like, does she have any, like, gadget devices on her? It's like, well, she has a smartphone. It's like, well, just go on to the internet and just look up, like, the GPS of this girl's smartphone. And it's like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think of that. And so Jack is going like, okay, well, where is she? And so they end up saying where the location is, like it's over water. And Jack is like, well, okay, well, I'm going to go and find this woman within the next 48 hours or your next rescue will be free. Like, as if this is some weird pizza man. And I was like, God, like, so much about Brad Pitt's character was so good in this movie. And it was actually funny. And it was actually, like, the best part of the film. And, like, if they were to have actually made a sequel, which I don't think there will be, because I would be really surprised if there really is one. Because I feel like there's so many one-off movies that they don't really care to make a franchise of anything anymore. And plus, like, if we go on and make a sequel of this movie, I just don't think that it'll turn out as, like, I think it might be better than this first one, but again, like, we would want Brad Pitt to be in the whole entire movie, and who cares about both Loretta and Alan? It just, like, yeah, what would have worked the best in this movie should have been like the whole movie. But so anyways, we have Jack. So Jack is to arrive and is to kind of gear up and is to get Jack and Alan going on this mission, while Beth is to weirdly also want to go on and find Loretta, but she does it a lot later than I was like, wait a minute, that seems so stupid. So instead of having Beth just go with Jack and Alan, instead, Beth just takes her sweet time to eventually do the exact same thing that Alan and Jack were trying to do in the early part of this film, which was go and find her. And so, yeah, so, like, I didn't get that. Like, it just felt like Beth just had a delayed reaction, and like it just seems like they just needed to waste more time in this film, and so Beth having to go on and try to find Loretta was just another just massive waste. But I guess it is what it is. So now Loretta. Loretta is with Fairfax, trying to want to have Loretta do do this whole reading of this dialect, whether she wants to or not. So Fairfax is to bring her to this place where there's a whole bunch of food present, and then is to tell her what the plan is, and she just kind of goes on to like, well, what if I don't want to do this? And Fairfax is like, well, I have a plane to get us to this island, so we're going. Because Loretta is to turn around and get chloroformed and to wake up on this plane. And when she like gets up, like she's saying like, oh, well, why did you chain me? And Fairfax is like, it's a seatbelt. And so Loretta gets out of her seatbelt and is trying to get through the plane. She's like, whoa. And so she has to get back into the seat because she's still feeling the effects of chloroform. And so we have Fairfax, who gets Loretta to this tented place where it's to be near the tip of D, I guess, the D tip. And the volcano with its eruptions, I guess, were to go on and uncover this possible tomb. But we'd come to find out that that's not the actual location of where this actually is. So Fairfax is to go on and had bought this Atlantic island, and so whatever he is to be able to do on it to discover where exactly this tomb is like, well, he owns this island, so he can do whatever he wants. So, and they want to be on a race to try to get to this tomb before this volcano erupts by the end of this film, conveniently. So ruining whatever they were to actually discover, because you go on and you have a treasure hunt movie that doesn't have treasure at the end of this to justify any number of these people going on and getting any little trinket or gold or whatever. Just be like, hey, well, I'm rich now, or hey, or I'm this now. But really, it's just to put together at the end of this another book for Loretta to put out. So we have it where Fairfax is wanting to try to get Loretta to decipher this thing, and so Loretta is kind of picking bits and pieces, something about the Well of Tears, and Fairfax is like, what does that even mean? So we have it where Fairfax is to go off and tell Loretta forcibly, hey, like, keep figuring out what this is. So Jack and Alan are to make their way to this camp where Loretta is being held, and Jack just runs up this fence, hops over it. Hurricane Rana, some guy out of nowhere, is like sleeper holding a lot of other guys, and it's like super cool, and it's the greatest thing of this movie. And then Alan is going on, and he's trying to be a part of what Jack is doing. But Jack is just telling Alan, it's like, well, hey, why don't you just stay in the car? Like, I think I can take it from here. And Alan's like, well, wait, like, could I just be the guy that just tells Loretta that she's safe now? And I just kind of hush her. And Jack is like, sure, you'll be that guy. So, but Alan continues to just follow Jack anyways. And so, while Jack is tripping and finding sheets, wrapping around people, smacking them together, and all kinds of these really cool, interesting, like, kind of fight scenarios, we have it where Alan at some points is slapping somebody, and Jack is now upset with Alan because it's like, wait a minute, Alan, like, I already had that guy knocked out. You just hit him while he was already unconscious. And Alan is like, well, but I just wanted to be part of it. I just thought, like, I had to. It was an impulse. And Jack is like, oh, okay, sure. So we now go on and have Loretta, who is zip tied to this chair, with Fairfax, who is to tell his men it's like only zip tie, like, don't zip tie everything, because eventually she's going to need a free hand to decipher what this is. So now they are to be wheeling out Loretta in this wheel well with her chair, and weirdly, Alan is just holding on to Loretta's foot, and Jack is holding on to the wheel well, just kind of going on and like running them out of there as explosions and everything are to happen. And so Fairfax, looking at his men, is like, well, hey, like, how is this going on? So they make it to the car. Like, we have Jack, who is to have the smallest unconventional car for, like, because of course he does. And so this just leads to Jack turning to Loretta and saying, like, shh, you're safe now. And Alan's like, wait, that was my line. And so Jack is like, whatever. It's just like, so as Jack is trying to comfort Loretta, and like Loretta is like, who are you? Who are you, sir? And so all of a sudden we have Jack, who ends up getting nailed with this bullet and ends up having Alan splattered with Jack's blood. And Alan's like, oh my god, I think I tasted him in my mouth. I think I have some of his brains on my face. So Alan and Loretta, we have Alan who's trying to get Loretta just shoved into the back seat of this car with her goofy chair still, because Alan is saying they don't have time to free Loretta from her zip ties. So they're going on and they're driving with this little dinky car, and they're driving like crazy to get out of here. And they get to a point where Alan is to almost drive off this ledge, and he luckily is to stop it, like, whoa, like, I stopped at the right time. So Alan is to reassess that he has blood all over his face, and so when Alan is to look back, he realizes that Loretta had fallen out of the car, and Alan is thinking, like, oh my god, she fell to her death. She's dead. Oh my god. So Alan is to get out of the car, just trying to think where Loretta possibly could be, and that she's probably dead at this point. But instead we just have Loretta, who is just fallen off of the road somewhere, and she's desperately now asking for Alan's help to unzip tie her. Like, hey, now do you have time to unzip tie me? So Alan's like, okay, sure. So now we have a bunch of Fairfax's thugs on these motorcycles trying to chase after these people, And so we have it where, of course, Loretta's outfit is to be very like glittery and standoutish. You can kind of see it anywhere. Whereas Ralphie is to spot a little piece of Loretta's outfit to kind of track her down. So Alan is to realize that because of Loretta's outfit standing out so much, that maybe she should tear part of it off to go on and try to have the guys be distracted by this outfit, wanting to go and find it. And so, come to find out, we have two thugs who end up smacking into one another with these motorcycles. And Loretta and Alan are weirdly just concerned about the well-being about these two guys. It's like, oh my god, do you think that they're okay? They tried to kill you. They tried to put a bullet inside of your bate, and you're worried about their safe and well-being and whatever. I'm like, no. So, come to find out, the dress that, or the onesie that Loretta had got on, like she had torn the sleeves and the pants part off. So like someone would just see the certain designs as it would to be just on this stick. So we have Loretta getting back the pieces of this onesie because it's on loan, and if we don't have the same joke of Alan when the car was to flip over numerous times over, and Alan starts to pick up the car pieces, and Loretta's like, what are you going to try to do? Put the little car back together? We now have it where, of course, Alan is say the same joke to Loretta about, like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to go on and put the onesie back together? And Loretta's like, well, no. Like, so, like, it's on loan. So we have a moment where both of them are trying to be on this water, and come to find out Alan doesn't like to be in the water, because eventually when he comes out of the water, we find out that this guy is to have eczema upon his back. So now they're both together, like next to this fire, and Loretta is putting this like chemical stuff in this fire to make it burn better, and Alan just has a weird number of things that he is to try to push off as like, oh well, like, yeah, those face masks thing, like those were a gift from my mother, and this is a gift from that, and like this isn't really mine, and and Loretta's like, sure. So Alan is to have this eczema problem, and so Loretta just keeps putting on these goofy masks things that'll work just as well as the chemical stuff that she already dumped out upon this fire. So we find out that Alan is to have this hammock thing set up, and so Loretta and Alan are just going on to like sleep in this hammock weirdly together, because I guess it can fit two people. And so Alan and Loretta are to fall asleep in this hammock weirdly together, and Loretta is to be the first one who wakes up, and she's to figure out how to just slide out of this hammock. And so come to find out, like, Loretta and Alan, it seems that Loretta is to know all about Alan, realizing that he was some prom king or something like that, and that he was to try to go on to make it big in Hollywood, and all he ended up doing was eventually just becoming this book model of this sludge that Loretta was just putting out. And so Alan was going on and saying, like, well, like, you're kind of right. Alan was to go on and mention, like, all the family and that he had, and that he was to go on to try to run away to Hollywood. And he was to be a struggling model, and he was to eventually land the cover of this book, and he was so embarrassed that he was the cover of this book that he didn't want to go on and talk to any of his friends or anybody who were to have gone on and outed him about this guy in the cover of this book. But then all of a sudden, when Alan was going around one day, he met a fan of this book. And so this girl was like, "Oh my God, you're Dash! Oh my God, Dash!" And then Alan was to realize, it's like, "Oh my God, like, this actually, like, helps people. Like, this actually is to, like, be a thing to, like, it has a fan base and whatever." And so, like, Alan had gotten way more proud about him being the cover of this book, and like, so he wasn't that embarrassed about it afterwards because of how much it helped a number of readers and a number of people. And so that's the thing that he eventually grew to like about it. So, and Alan's like, "Well, hey, Loretta, like, don't call yourself sludge. Like, there's a number of people that read that sludge. So, like, hey, like," so it's like, well, that part was kind of nice. So we have the two of them that are scrambling off to make it to this town where there is to be this police station they go to, and supposedly this police station will protect them. And so both of them are to go off to get an exchange of clothes, and then they go off to dance within this place where they're playing music. And I'm like, this is just like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where, like, we don't have, like, people that really like one another, but some way or another they just start to almost fall for one another, and it's kind of like that in a lot of ways. So Loretta and Alan. So come to find out, Loretta is to hear some woman say some line about the well of endless tears, and we have Loretta's like, "Well, wait a minute, could you tell me that line again?" And so come to find out that the well of endless tears is an actual location, and that is to be the muttering thing that was, of course, on that paperwork that that little thing that Fairfax was giving her before, the little hieroglyphic things. So we have both Loretta and we have both Alan that are to realize, oh my God, like, so there might actually be a legitimate treasure somewhere, and so, like, maybe we'll go on and we'll figure this out. So Fairfax, it seems, is kind of like right behind these characters, like trying to put the pieces together and figure this out also. And so, as well as we have a number of times where Fairfax is to just be upset with the men that he is to have hired to go on and trying to retrieve Loretta and Alan to figure out this whole clue. So now we have it to where Beth is going on and finally trying to, like, well, I guess I should go on and I should try to find Loretta. And so Loretta goes on to this plane to get to where this island is, to go and find this weird, creepy cargo plane guy who is to, of course, be cargo plane guy, because I don't see it anywhere. Man, does that suck. Oh, well. Oscar, my bad. Oscar, who is played by Oscar. There we go. So Oscar is to be on this cargo plane, and he has this weird thing with this goat. And so Beth is just going on of like, I went on a cargo plane with a crazy person. Like, oh my God. And so when Beth is to finally make it to this place to talk to these authorities, she finally is just to break down and say, like, you know what? Like, I rarely ever sleep. Like, I've worked so ridiculously hard in my life, like I'm sure you guys have, but like, I desperately just want somebody to massage me with both my feet and my shoulders at the same time. And I want you guys to go on and I want you to help me find my friend. And so, because of this whole speech, it seems like these officers were to go on and help her with this boat find Loretta. So, we now have it where, unfortunately, Fairfax is to go on and find Alan and Loretta again, stealing them away upon this weird, goofy looking vehicle. And so Loretta is to be stolen away from this vehicle, and Alan is chasing after them with this motorcycle. And Fairfax is going on and saying that it's like, well, hey, like, this guy looks so familiar. Why does he look so familiar to me? And when finally Alan is to slam his face upon the back of this vehicle, Fairfax is like, oh, that's your cover model from your book. So Alan has to go on and play the rescue role here and is trying to beat down one of these men, as Loretta is to go on and pour alcohol over this vehicle and is to take this guy's cigar and light this vehicle on fire. And so what ends up happening is we have both Loretta and Alan then end up getting away from this vehicle again. But it seems that Fairfax is going to re-meet up with them to find exactly where this cave is, forcing Loretta to go through this cave and squeeze through it, and to make their way through the Well of Tears to find Tomb Coleman's tomb. The Tomb of Coleman's tomb. Yeah. So, Coleman's tomb. So, we're having people squeeze through this little hole, and even at one point, we have Loretta, who is to not think that she can make it all the way through, but eventually she does. And then Fairfax is asking now Alan to go through. It's like, wait a minute, like, if, like, Loretta had problems getting through, what makes you think, like, an even bigger guy is going to fit through there? So they go through and they make it through the hole, and one of Fairfax's men was to die and he was to fall to his death. And everybody's like, well, hey, like, should we go further? And Fairfax is like, well, yeah, like, we have to make that guy's death more meaningful. Who cares? Like, let's go on. We can't have him die in vain. Come on, let's go. So they all make it through, and they come to find out that this tomb was to just be this tribute to a woman loving a man, and come to find out that this man, the whole Crown of Fire thing was really just some shells that he kept putting upon this girl's hair, like kept giving her like these shells consistently, to where it somehow or another just became a crown. And so the crown, there wasn't actually any treasure, any real value there. Like, Loretta was to just break it down and just have it be just some ancient love story, and that's all that really should have been. And so Fairfax is like, wait a minute, all the money I spent, everything that I did trying to come up with this story, and there's no crown, there's no treasure at the end of this, and there's no way to haul anything out of here in time because this volcano is going to erupt conveniently again. So, come to find out, the volcano is again erupting, and so we have Fairfax, who is to have Rafi kind of help him put both Alan and Loretta into this tomb and bury them. Ralphie is to try to be nice and is to give them this crowbar in the tomb. He drops it purposely. So Alan and Loretta are to eventually realize that this crowbar had dropped there, and so they desperately try to get out. And so they run out of this hole to try to find this water to swim in it, to try to get caught up by this current so they can kind of quickly get away from this location as quickly as possible. And then they pop out of this water, and like Alan was saying, it's like, well, hey, like I guess this is going to be worthwhile for me to like swim in this water, even though I'll get eczema. Like still, like it's well worth it to save both of our lives. So Fairfax is to see Beth on this boat, and he's to flag them down, as Rafi is to run off with this boat, saying that like, well, hey, like you think you own the island, now the island owns you, as he makes his way off. So Fairfax is to flag down Beth's ship and is to get put onto the ship, and has this like sheet over him, and he's drinking this little concoction of sorts. So when Loretta and Alan are finally found, they go on and they are to mention this one other guy on this boat, and Alan and Loretta are like, oh my god, like, hey, he's the guy that was to kidnap us. And so Fairfax is running, and Oscar is to fall over him, and is like, dude, like, you're on a boat. Where are you going to run to? And I was like, yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm like, that's stupid. Where is he going to run off to? This is not exactly a big, massive boat. He'll get caught eventually. So Fairfax, I'm assuming, gets imprisoned. We have Loretta and we have Alan, who is to go on, and Loretta is going to put together another book, and is to have it already done. And so it seems that Allison is reading to Beth's mother what all is going on, as she is to stop at the more erotic parts. So Loretta and Alan are to spend the last bit of this movie going on and having Alan with a much shorter haircut, because they must have just shot this out of they must have just kind of shot this like out of whatever, like out of part of film. And so they're just like, well, I guess, like, should we, like, we're not going to put a wig over the guy, so so he just weirdly got a haircut at this point. So they go on, and both of them are on this island together. And so the ending of it is having Alan talking about erupting and all this kind of stuff, and eruptions and all. And like Loretta's like, no, we have to build up to that. And so Alan is going and just like, well, why don't we just kiss? Like, isn't that simple enough? Isn't that good enough for you? And Loretta and Alan are to kiss. Like, well, like, I guess that could be a good ending. And so, like, the movie just kind of ends. And there's an end credit scene that is to happen after the little first camera roll. I don't know if there's a second one. I just saw the only one that I thought was the end credit scene, where all of a sudden Alan and Loretta are at this meditative retreat, and all of a sudden we have Jack Trainer, who's in the back, who has this now bandana over his head, and Jack is like, psst, psst, and Alan's like, oh my god, you're still alive? And Jack is just like, well, yeah, like, come to find out, that bullet only grazed like 10% of my brain, so I just switched to the other 10% of my brain and I lived. And so you're like, what? Like, okay, like, so you're still alive. Like, are you still like 100%? And the guy's like, yeah, I'm still 100%. And so it's like, okay. So, like, that's the end credit scene of that guy, Jack Trainer, still technically being alive, and I'm sure they'll reuse him in some movie later on, if they ever do a sequel. I don't know why they would, but they probably will do one. So with that said, I think I'm just going to get out of here, call it a day, to go out of my way to do another review. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Yeah, like, again, like, I don't feel like I was probably the target audience for this, and I even went on and just completely did not mention the whole like butt and like scene where like Alan was completely like taking his clothes off, and Loretta was going on and trying to take all these leeches that were all out of Alan's butt, and doing all these like leech things. Like I thought that that was a stupid part of the film that I didn't even want to mention, but there's that for you quickly. Like a lot of people are like, wait a minute, you didn't mention the leeches and you didn't mention that part. I really didn't care for that part of the film, but I mentioned it now. So there's that. Like me not trying to avoid something, but me just going on and like that was stupid. Uh, Honestly, I just didn't want to see some guy's butt so close to the screen. Um, but again, I guess that is what it is for this film. So, because like it's just a comedy thing, like it's not like a romantic thing or whatever. And so we just have it to where consistently Loretta is like, oh, like well, like because she ends up seeing also like Alan's front. She's like, oh well, like yeah, like I guess you never really like think about it, but then like it's there, like it's you never really like were like you've heard stories, but just kind of promoting how big Alan's personality is. Yeah. So with that said, I think I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.